Today is August 1st, 2022. I'm Diane Barrett, presenting with Diane Divelbess and Grethe Cammermeyer their thoughts on the Roe v. Wade decision called "Your Vote is Your Voice." So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's the distressing part right now of the efforts to first the abortion decision, then the discussion about Clarence Thomas and him wanting to take on contraception and gay marriage. And it's very disconcerting to know how long we have fought for those rights and privileges, and then to have, someone else decide that, no, we don't deserve equal treatment.
Well, when are they going to decide that women shouldn't have bank accounts?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Remember
They're
when?
decide they shouldn't vote?
Yeah.
No.
This is all fairly new, these privileges.
Well, maybe he shouldn't have the privilege of getting married to a white woman.
No, it's curious,
Exactly.
curious that he didn't say that was one that should be reevaluated also. But I mean, can you imagine taking away contraception as an opportunity for people to avoid? And you hear of the number of women now who are choosing to get sterilized, and men to have vasectomies so that there are no accidents. That's pretty extreme as the alternative to being able to have an abortion, either to save your life or because you need to in terms of your mental health.
It's when I make this statement because I don't think people realize when I first came down to California and I was an intern, my first rotation was OB-GYN.
Was what?
OB-GYN.
Uh-huh.
And so every night, anywhere from 3 to 5 women would come in septic and die.
Yeah.
Bad abortions. And I'm standing there, I'm going, what? Why don't we have at least sterile abortions for these women? And that's all they're asking for.
Uh-huh.
If you don't give it through medical systems with sterility, they're going to do it in the alleys and the
That's right.
Women are
kitchen
determined.
tables. It's not going to stop,
Right.
but you're going to have the death of a lot of women, and maybe that's what they want. I
Uh-huh.
don't know.
I don't think they had the insight to realize the ramification of the decisions. It's not just the black and white yes and no, but rather all of the ripple effect that we're now seeing in this country. I mean, to have to go to Canada or to Mexico for treatment. I mean, it's
Japan or China.
Yep.
Yeah.
I counseled women who had made the decision to have an abortion, and it's very important, and they remember it. It wasn't made lightly. It's a part of their life in a different way.
yeah.
And many times it's the doctor who is really recommending this, knowing that this woman who desperately wants this child will not live, cannot live,
That's right.
because this embryo is going to kill her, and so on. And
It's not a decision to be made by some individual in a sterile environment at the Supreme Court. They obviously cannot make that decision.
No, what I keep thinking is if they had any of the experiences that these women have had in terms of one of their daughters being raped, or their wife having an ectopic pregnancy, or having some medical condition where you had to choose between treatment for cancer or an abortion, if any of those experiences were things that these folks who are making the decision actually had in their own life, you wonder if they would feel the same way about it. Because it's one thing to give lip service to it. It's something totally different when it's part of your lived experience.
but there's also the elephant in the room, which is that most of those conservative justices are Catholic. And the Catholic is taught from cradle on that abortion is wrong. And they're almost inured to the notion that, of course, if the mother dies, that's the way God wants it, because the important thing is to save the embryo, the fetus, the zygote, as far as I'm concerned. And when I was a little kid, my mother always said, there were two big hospitals in Phoenix, Good Samaritan and St. Joseph's. And my mother always said, we're not going to St. Joseph's. We were Methodists. And she said, and that really boiled down to the fact that a good friend of my mother's lost her life at St. Joe's because she was having a baby, and they wouldn't save her life and sacrifice the baby. Well, so who lost? Her husband lost a wife and mother, and her children. She had 3 already. They lost their mother. And so what was the fairness in that? That a man should lose his wife and 3 children are left motherless. And all this because of a child who had not yet been born. I was afraid from that point on. I was afraid of St. Joseph's.
I can see why.
And I would go to St. Joseph's for something that had nothing to do with OBGYN, I'll put it that way. But
yeah, well, and that's also a misnomer, because if you were in hospice,
yes, that's true.
That this carries throughout, and it's and there's also for me there's also the audacity of somebody else telling me what I can do with my body.
Exactly.
It is just really, I had an experience in 1971. I'd had a back injury and was on medication. They did x-rays and I didn't realize that I was pregnant. Abortions had just recently become, Roe v. Wade had just recently been passed. And so I went to see somebody because I was concerned about birth defects and everything, and wanted an abortion. And I went in, I had an appointment with somebody I'd never seen before, and it was an old guy with white hair. And he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Women have had x-rays and the medications that you were on, and so everything will be fine." And so he was not keen on doing a D&C. And about 3 days later, I was trying to, get this in my mind that maybe everything was okay. I started bleeding. And I said, "I've started bleeding. I am going to do everything I can to keep that bleeding going so that I will have a spontaneous abortion." I drove from Seattle to Portland and back again because I had it. It was on my list of things to do, and got home and had the spontaneous abortion, and thought, this guy didn't know what he was talking about. Nature took care of its own, but how fortunate it was for me. And on the flip side of it, being very sad and wondered if I was ever going to be able to carry another child, because my husband and I had wanted to have more children. And it wasn't until I got pregnant a third time now, and that went to, was uncomplicated, that there was that settling in my mind because there was sadness that goes with it. And, you know, it was Diane talking about the counseling that was so important because nobody makes those decisions just
Easily.
willy-nilly. Yeah.
I always say too, and also that the fetus, from its get-go of the meeting of the sperm and the ovum, is a parasite
Mhm,
until it comes out.
mhm.
It just is. Now, what happened to you was the parasite got killed.
Yeah.
Right.
Those things you thought would alter the fetus such that it would have genetic
Yeah.
or a
Right.
screw up.
Uh-huh.
So your body, the parasite got killed by what you were going through. And so you eliminated it.
Uh-huh.
But for me, if you think of it as a parasite rather than a person, you have a much different imagery
All
Well,
right.
to happen.
Well, you know, it was probably 15 years ago or so where I had seen somewhere that the definition of a fetus in the dictionary was changed.
Ah,
And it was changed from fetus to baby.
ah,
Oh, wow.
Really,
oh,
Yeah.
I've noticed those changes on different things too. It's amazing, isn't it?
And
Yeah.
you know, it's just that hallmark of you know, trouble is coming.
uh-huh.
And it was shocking, and it still is, of
Right.
people talking about a baby when it is a fetus, or as you say, a couple of
Parasite.
cells. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
It would not
parasite-
live, it would
Yeah.
not live if it were not inside a human being.
Uh-huh.
It's a parasite.
It's a
And
parasite.
it comes out, if it can stand on its own, okay, but if it can't, it can't.
Well,
Uh-huh.
I think it was quite ironic that after all these decisions are made in various states, including that, you know, a baby is a person at a conception, that that woman who was getting a ticket for driving, a speeding ticket, was saying to the police that, well, you know, I'm pregnant, and so there are two people in the car, and that, you know, that immediately was going to the courts. And I don't know where it went in the scheme of things, but that's what she was challenging the police with. There are two of us here, according to this law.
Fast thinking. Right.
Oh my God.
But you knew that that had to be challenged at some point.
Well, you know, that Judge Barrett, unfortunately carries my name, and I don't like that.
Right.
You know, she was the one that said, "All we lesbians are so lucky because there'll be all these babies we can go pick up."
What? Say
Yeah.
that again.
That's why all these women should not have abortions. They should go through with the process, give birth, and then drop the babies in a parking lot or something so lesbians get it. She said that, but the lesbians should be happy. So we can.
But you've got to be in the state. You have to be in a state where lesbians are allowed to have children. You know, gay couples in some places are not allowed. I mean, it just goes on and on and on.
Boy,
Well, now with this getting rid of Roe Wade, it's also threatening test tube babies.
Yeah, and you know, doing away with contraceptives. Can you just imagine what this world would be like? I mean, you'd have the horniest guys in the world, just because you know, if you have no contraceptive, and you know, for the women in the military to not have access, even if they're not married, the risk of rape and sexual assault in the military is, and therefore, you know, they are caught in a real bind, because if they got pregnant because of the Hyde Amendment, they can't get abortions on a military base, but then to not be able to get it out in the civilian world either. I mean, it's
well,
the
first,
ramifications.
the whole control.
Yeah,
The oral what?
the whole control.
Oh, yeah.
of pregnancy, and therefore the future generations lies with the woman.
Yeah.
Because she's either gonna have sex or she isn't gonna have sex. And
She's gonna be raped.
well, she may be raped, but I'm just saying, it's one of those things that's women in control of all sex again. They didn't realize that because they want to be in control of all the future generations, which they're not.
But it is curious. We moved from a time, at least when we were young, where you didn't have premarital sex, because if the woman got pregnant, then you'd end up going to Clarence or to the home for wayward girls, and then come back 9 months later and everything else. And then we moved to free love, free sex, and now it's, everybody hooks up after a drink in a bar, and then it's sort of like, well, what's going to be happening now? Are women going to again decide, maybe I'll just wait until there is a better time, or a better, no sex before marriage, because it seems as though government is just sort of sneaking in on all sorts of personal choices and decisions, and we're going back in time.
Yeah, I can tell you're ready to do that Roe v. Wade video.
I think you've just had it.
No cameo appearance, see?
It's frightening to me that our Supreme Court can make such a stupid mistake. I mean, they want to go back to where men controlled money, controlled everything. And the thing is that they don't really control the future generation or the production of the future generation. And that's what they want control of. But they're not going to get it.
But
the woman controls that.
Well, this is a slightly different thing, but it's related to the loss of Roe Wade by these 5 justices who believe in what are they called? The constitutional judges or something, because they believe anything that in the Constitution deserves to be eliminated. Well, I'm sorry, but the 18th century is not the 21st century. And why should we, as human beings, sacrifice all that knowledge that we have subsequently learned about the world, the universe, human nature, science, and pretend like nothing has happened, since the day that men wore breeches and pilgrims had buckles on their shoes. And
Well,
it's just absurd.
But then they really should eliminate the use of the AR-15, because that was not part of the Constitution.
Right, they only had muskets.
Yeah. You
Right.
could only have those types of weapons.
Yeah.
You only had one, you get one shot for what you put down in the musket. You couldn't pull 2 shots in 5 minutes.
That's right. No.
Here
You
they can
couldn't,
2
you
or
couldn't
3.
riddle the body you couldn't riddle the body.
Sort of
One
like
shot.
I don't understand.
one ejaculation.
That's it. You gotta go to the bathroom for the rest.
Yeah.
That was a nice one. One ejaculation, no more. Oh,